Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Archard from Clarion Housing Group, Asset Sustainability Manager, working on our energy efficiency program and our retrofit work. I'm just going to run through the contents of what I'm covering. I'm just going to provide a little bit of background to Clarion's approach to energy efficiency under the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund over the last couple of years, and then when I finish talking and given that context, I will hand over to Ben Whiterod, who's going to talk more about the work that we've done. Particularly in the area of Tonbridge and Malling, which is what we're focusing on today, some of the retrofit work of the estates that we've worked on there, and particularly then the blocks that were part of that work. So yeah, Ben will run through everything to do with the characteristics of those properties, the retrofit specification, and the actual aspects of the delivery of the work and the sort of lessons learned. So you want to move on to the next slide. So just a very quick bit of background about Clarion Housing Group. Clarion's is the largest housing association in the country, and we have 125,000 homes. Those are mainly in sort of southern England, in East Anglia, London, and just south of London in Kent, Surrey, and east and west Sussex. As a result of having obviously a lot of stock there, this 1,000 number here is all about the fact that we have an in-house repairs department which delivers approximately 1,000 repairs a day across the course of the year. So a lot of activity and a lot of construction activity. And again, based on the size of Clarion, we're actually present in 170 different local authority areas. However, the main core of our stock is obviously in a smaller number, more like 30, but we do have that overall footprint. And Clarion has 4,000 staff. As I say, that does include our in-house repairs business as well. And we have approximately 350,000 tenants, residents living in our properties. And within that context, we obviously are looking at how to upgrade and improve the energy ratings and energy performance of our stock, and also looking to what net zero carbon means for our homes and what our long-term plan is for that. But what I want to do is just set the context for, so if you can go to the next slide, Ben, that'd be great. This retrofit work that we're talking about today, under the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, both the Demonstrator and Wave 1, which Clarion's been involved in, we have upgraded a total of now 505 properties, and those are located, well, they've actually been located in Fenland and also in Tonbridge, in the Tonbridge and Malling area in Kent, and also in Merton in South London, where we focused the work. And we've worked with United Living on those properties in Tonbridge and Malling, Kent, and also the properties in Merton. What we've initially looked at in this Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund supported work are lower performing, if you like, properties that we have. So they've been system built or solid walled, in other words, uninsulated walls. And also in Finland, we looked at properties that were off gas as well, and if I had a lower rating because they didn't have gas heating. So D-rated and E-rated properties, some F-rated properties amongst those. We've delivered this work through our existing, in this context, our existing planned maintenance contracts. So the same contracts that we do everything with regards to kitchens, bathrooms, roofs, cyclical decorations, all of that work. We've also then done our energy efficiency improvements. And United Living, as I said, are one of the main contractors and done the work that we'll talk about today. And also Equans have done the work in other areas, particularly in the Fenland area. And as well as carrying out carrying out the work itself, they've also delivered, overseen the PAS 2035 service for that as well, in terms of the retrofit assessments, the retrofit coordination, the retrofit designs, and that whole suite of PAS 2035 support. We've also overseeing the way we've delivered the work to sort of supporting Clarion, but also all work as a whole has some strategic consultancy support, including sort of some independent site surveys, and Bailey Garner have supported us in doing that and helped us in terms of sharing learning across all of the delivery teams, and both Clarion staff and working with the contractors, United Living and Equans, and their subcontractors as well. So that's the background generally to the work we've been doing. I'm going to go to the next slide, Ben. And then just zooming in before I hand over to Ben, to zoom in on the United Living area and the delivery, and particularly, as I say, we're talking about this Tonbridge and Morning area, which actually includes Tonbridge itself, and also a place called Snodland in North Kent. And these, and Ben will tell you more, but what we've looked at in these properties, the main construction type here is wimpy no fines, sort of system built concrete construction. So I say plenty of scope for improvement in terms of the insulation of those properties, and we've sort of looked at moving out and rolling program of upgrading those, and in that aspect we've delivered a number of works to a number of different property types here: houses, terrace, semi-detached, and also some blocks and sort of fairly low-rise blocks including that work. And just wanted to say that therefore this work weren't in the blocks that we've included. They have had been all social units, all social rented units. So we haven't had any leaseholder properties in there. So we were able to deliver that work. And I just want to make that now because Ben, make that point now because Ben won't be talking about any aspects of how to deal with leaseholders within this, because we didn't have leaseholders in the project. But certainly we're able to adapt and carry on with sort of retrofit plans and that we had to the blocks in the same way as we had the houses there. Okay, that's all for me. I'll hand over to Ben.
Thank you, Dan. Hi everyone, my name's Ben Whiterod. I'm the project manager for United Living, and I've had the privilege of being the project lead on the SHDF projects that Clarion and Euro have worked on over the last couple of years. So it's been a brilliant journey, and I'm going to run through, as Dan said, a little bit about the retrofit specification, some of the design issues that we've faced, and then I'll lead on to how we delivered it, and sort of things to look out for and lessons learned. So firstly, our approach on this particular project in Snodland, on the flats, on the houses, and on previous for Clarion, our approach has always been on an archetypal basis. We don't model every single individual property. We do batch them up into archetypes, and on this particular project we identified 7, all of which the construction is wimpy no fines, and the difference in characteristics in between the archetypes were brick cavity gables. We had monopitch roofs, we had pitch roofs, flat roofs, 3 beds, 4 beds, end of terrace, mid terrace, and also some overcrofts that were in particular quite a difficult archetype to model and design. On the estate, we had 100 houses, 35 of which were flats, which we will go a little bit more in depth with now. All of the properties and all of the archetypes have been run through full SAP also. There's been no RD SAP and go. It's always been run through and modelled through full SAP. Our approach also in design and delivery was that we would start with the houses first, gather some lessons learned, submit the planning application required to the flats as opposed to the houses, and then carry over those lessons, data and designs onto the flats. So moving on, we've got the estate plan. I thought I'd just give you a little view of that in the Saltings Road estate. As many of you know, working in social housing, we don't always have the luxury of being in one place. Housing can be quite scattered and projects become scattered, which can be logistically challenging. We were quite fortunate that we could park up on this estate and walk to every single property or flat that had works in progress. So that was yeah, that went down very well with all of us. So yeah, moving on. The flat specification. So we've got windows that are A-rated, U value of 1.4, that got replaced in certain areas, which I'll go through with you in a little bit more detail later on down the presentation. Doors were required, again A-rated. Flat roof replacements and adaptations. So all of the flats got a Bowder system. It was an overlay, and the adaptation is a detail that we had to create on the entire perimeter to facilitate the EWI. The EWI itself was 120mm mineral rock wool, and the render system used here was Stowe. As I mentioned previously, with the different archetypes, we've got a brick cavity gables on all of the flats, as well as some of the houses. And there we extracted and refilled where required. We did have the stance, and it was agreed between United Living and Clarion that where there isn't a certificate or guarantee on a particular cavity, we would extract and refill, and of course where they're empty they also get filled up. Going on to ventilation, so we used the air ecosystem. Is a demand control centralized mechanical vents. They have gone down extremely well. We've had some really positive feedback from tenants, suppliers and all. A very good quiet and system, relatively easy to install, and it was also got some fantastic info on and longevity, and Air Eco can prove that very well. So a great system there that's really done a lot in terms of keeping the property ventilated correctly, adequately, and getting over those mold issues with our Clarion tenants. It's also worth mentioning that as part of the system, we have smart triple vents that also line up with Air Eco. It's an Air Eco system. They run off humidity levels and will open and shut as and when required. This has been a real hit and gone down particularly well. They can be retrofitted into existing frames as well, should you have the room. A really good piece of kit and worth pairing up with the ventilation system. And lastly, monitoring. A lot of clients now like to gather a lot of data pre and post. So we're using a switchy monitoring system that go in each flat and house that we retrofit. And it's also quite a common approach now that clients ask for us to install these in the winter, say 6 months to a year before we actually retrofit the property, so they've got that real accurate data pre and post to look at, and sort of shows you all the good stuff you get when retrofitting these properties effectively. So the bigger picture, risk path C. You're always, if you're in social housing, you're going to be doing this HDF. The likelihood is you're working at scale. It's always going to fall under risk path C, in the need of employing architects and so on. Robust design, of course, each and every design we do has to be robust. It has to be compliant under PAS 2035, and it's exactly what we do. One of the top lines on the designer's brief from us is to ensure that when we're designing, that we're looking at ways in which we can minimise impact on tenants. As every property we're working on is occupied, we must ensure that we don't get carried away and get too intrusive. And a good example of that is where we have a range of properties that have a scaling detail. And the first option straight away that will come is no problem. You know, we'll go in there internally. We'll insulate that section. No dramas. However, we've got the risk of access, which could affect program delivery. But more importantly, it's how we're impacting these tenants. You know, we've got able, disabled people, people from different creeds and backgrounds. We've got prayer rooms we have to consider. Silly things like built-in wardrobes, beds, and so on, hoarders. We really don't want to be going in there disrupting people's rooms and private areas wherever we need to. So we come up with a solution where we could install installation externally. Okay, that in some cases could involve an increase in cost, yes, but you have to weigh up whether it's worth it or not. And in this case, it absolutely was. UL and Clarion were in full agreement that the solution that we come up with by lifting up 3 or 4 courses along the eaves of the roof and insulating that area externally was absolutely the way forward, not only from a tenant perspective, but also from a delivery point. All weather working. So you'll see in these pictures, there's a lot of tubing fitting on these scaffolds, including Monoflex. The big reason for that was these are Wimpy No Fine construction, and there's no manufacturer, tyre manufacturer, or system that will ensure a tight fixing into Wimpy No Fine's construction. That just due to the inconsistency of the construction. So therefore we had to tie up and over the roof. You'll see lots of beam works there. Again, an increase in cost that couldn't be avoided. So if you have got stock of Wimpy No Fines and their blocks of flats, please consider that as it will need to be a design. And whilst it had to be a design, we also incorporated a few mitigating factors that would help us along the delivery of the work. So Monoflex, which will protect us from the weather. We also added in a bespoke detail along the top working lift of the scaffolding, where we put a 45-degree Monoflex lid on the roof instead of what we'd class as a tin hat. This was a more cost-effective option and also sheltered us from wet weather when working on that top lift, which allows us to continue throughout these rainy periods. You'll see in the pictures, you can see the roof is slightly wet there. There was a lot of rain during that time, and this system worked very, very well. So moving on to a few of the design issues, we've got the roof overhang, which is the flat roofs on the blocks that we'll go into more detail on. We've got a stairwell and main wall junction, where we've got a stairwell that juts out and some windows that are facing onto the existing facade, which means that our 120 EWI would become a problem. Again, we'll run through all of these. We've got solid cavity wall details to run through, reducing risks where certain elements will not be replaced, i.e. windows and doors. We'll have a brief chat about the MEV, the access and compatibility of installing those in flats and houses. And lastly, I'll discuss the enabling works, which is fundamental to delivery. So the first one, we've got the flat roof. Now, to facilitate 120mm EWI plus the adhesive to the back of the board, and on top of the board, you've got the render build up. Being that PAS, we can't install any capping details, we had to extend the flat roof perimeter out throughout all elevations to facilitate that. So now we've made basically, and we've extended that roof all the way around. It's not a cap in detail, it's part of the roof. It becomes compliant, and it works very well. There were a few teething issues, so when we done our uncovering work at the very beginning, we uncovered one elevation to find out the build up, which gives us our existing design, as you can see on the left hand side. However, there was a change in build up where there was a cavity wall on the sides to the solid walls on the front and back, and therefore we had to revise that design accordingly so that we could have one that fits all, which is what you're looking at here, where we've got the compact foam and so on. The roof was insulated already, so we just had to extend that insulation along onto the overhang so that it met up with our wall insulation, creating that envelope of insulation, which is vital. That's pretty much it. Obviously, I did mention that there was a bowser system on the roof. We did originally look at just overlaying the perimeter. However, we couldn't obtain guarantees from bowser to do so, which meant that we had to carry out a complete overlay. Next one is design issues and reducing risks. As you can see in the picture, we've got windows wall to wall. Each one of those returns, we have got to put 120mm insulation, which is going to come out past the frame, over the opening and onto the glass, which we all know can't happen. So option one, as you can see in the design below, bring up your 120 EWI and then reduce it as it comes close to the window with a chamfered edge. There's a risk. That risk falls 3 flights, 3 floors, from ground right to the top. Do we really want to have that risk? Do we want to manage that risk? Not really. We want to try and avoid that risk altogether and get rid of it. And that's exactly what we've done. So we took this to our client Clarion. We went through the risks involved, and it was a collective decision. It didn't take long. Those windows then got replaced with a reduced width. Add-ons went in either side so that we could run our 120 all the way through, and then that frame would then sit within the insulation layer and completely remove that thermal bridge altogether. Again, very similar. We've got the stair core that comes out here. Again, that stair core is wimpy no fines with a gyp line and UPVC cladding, which all got ripped off. We got to the windows and see that was butting up against the existing facade, which meant that we couldn't run our EWI all the way through. Again, solution here was, and agreed, we would replace that window at reduced width, put the add-ons in, and away we go. We did get the light levels checked within the communal areas to make sure that that wasn't reduced at a dangerous amount. We were very fortunate that we had windows on the front and opposite elevations, so there was no impact there whatsoever, and it worked very well. So ventilation, you'll see in this picture we're starting to box in our system. This is in a kitchen area. However, some of the things and the key things that you'll need to consider when doing this is obviously making sure that you've got your general arrangements to hand so that you can start mapping out where you're going to vent the system out from, what sort of duct route you're going to take, and also positions of the unit itself. Ideally, you know, we want to tuck them up in cupboards, places where they're not going to be on show, out of the way. They're very, very quiet. They come with noise dampening components that can be wall mounted, ceiling mounted, and take off any vibration or anything like that. In this case, you can see we've had no choice but to mount the unit onto the ceiling and directly vent that out, not needing any type of ducting at all. You also have to consider the potential of present ACMs. So where we've got surface mount, whether you're doing boxing in, whatever it may be that is going to be intrusive, and then you're going to start drilling towards the ceilings, that is a big pinch point. So please make sure that you check that out prior to any installation rolling out on your MEV systems. Another design issue we've got here, where we've got this brick column in the centre of a block. Now we've done a block not too far away for Clarion, where we got structural engineers in to see whether this was a structural integrity part of the building, and it wasn't. We've done the same thing here, and we found out that it was. So we was unable to remove this brickwork, which is what we would have liked to have done. We was unable to do it, however, so we had to come up with a solution with minimal risk, which is what we've done here, where we've pumped the cavity. We've also EWI'd over it, and the risk here is on the brick return, which we've installed a Thermo Pro insulated reveal bead. This risk will be managed because obviously it's a reduced thickness to the EWI. However, there is insulation on it and the risk is minimal. Enabling. Now this is a big one for delivering your work that you intend to do. It's huge, and we've learned no end of lessons on the upfront enabling works, and making sure that you get accurate measured surveys of absolutely everything that needs doing, so that you can batch that up and start really rolling out a program and getting these things done. So things to consider: gates, fencing, boundaries, communication to the tenants to let them know that we're going to have to remove a fence, we're going to have to cut down a brick wall that's butting up against your property. We're gonna need to move this gate out of the way. It could be a reduced width gate that you put in, or a slightly different layout. Comms is really important, even at this first stage. External meters. Is there an external meter there that you can't go around for obvious reasons? If so, that upfront comms with the energy provider to get that relocated is essential in order for you to successfully deliver the program. Bell casts and uneven existing finishes. You'll see in the picture there's a drip that runs along the top of the windows, and that runs on every level. They are grinded out. We're not going to cut out the back of the board to make that flat. We create a flat surface first, and we put our EWI onto that flat surface. We're not going to hinder the installation at all. So again, making sure that you pick things up like that prior to starting, because you will at delivery be stop and starting, and it's horrendous. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to walk up to whatever property you're working on and know in your mind that has been all the information has been captured, the enabling works have been completed, and it is therefore ready to be insulated. Drains and gullies. There are some fantastic things on the market that you can use to avoid relocating gullies. Wemico being one, offer a great solution where it's a aluminium powder coated box. Gully box is pretty much what it's called. That's backed with aerogel that will sit in between your insulation layer between or below EPC. Allowing your downpipes or SVPs, whatever it might be, to divert into the existing gully rather than moving all that out of the way. Because in some cases, your next service point could be in cases we've had in private homeowners' properties and so on. So it can, something like that is worth its weight in gold. Gas is another big one. External gas pipe runs. gas flues, making sure that you're getting access into the property to extend those flues where required, and also to carry out the external gas runs, whether you bring them back internally or you bring them out so that they clear your finished EWI level. Roofline designs, you'll find whether you're working on blocks and houses, where gullies are, where rainwater pipes are, the gutter layouts and so on, whether you can bring those out in line with the others, especially if you're not working on the property adjacent. You could come up with a few issues there in terms of the roof line, so really focusing on that is well worth it. Ground levels, making sure that your ground levels are adequate. Are they breaching DPC? Are they falling towards the property? At what extent are you going to have to carry out groundworks? Is it going to be the whole driveway? Is it going to be the whole path? What is it you need to do to make sure it's ready to receive insulation? Because you do not want to be doing it after. You really don't. So it's so important that you capture absolutely everything at this point. And lastly, we've got structural appraisal and asbestos. So goes without saying, we don't want to be covering up anything that's got structural issues. So we'll get an engineer out there to carry out a survey, and we will complete any recommended actions on that survey prior to installing any EWI or any other measures. And asbestos, of course, goes without saying, full R&D in these cases where we're doing deep and standard retrofits is definitely required. And of course, asbestos needs to be considered and removed prior to any work starting. Delivery of works. So just a brief overview of that. 100 houses and 35 flats were successfully retrofitted within 10 months. We had an open door site office. We were fortunate to have a void within the estate that we used as a site office, as well as a hub for tenants to come in, respite, as well as any questions and whatnot they had for the site team, that's site manager and RLO. Our approach at the very beginning, when commencing the construction phase, was to carry out a pilot. We carried out a pilot to the void property that we're using as an office, as well as next door, and that gave us two different archetypes, a mid and an end terrace, which we learned a lot from, and we didn't roll out the rest of the program until we were all happy, not only with the design, the cost and everything else, and once we were happy, obviously we then we cracked on with the rest of the estate. A little tip, we looked heavily at green areas and land that we could pinch from either Clarion or the local council. In this case, we leased a large area where we could store materials. Again, a bit of mitigation here, where we understood that there were long leading times for Rockwool, and I believe currently that is the case now again. We wanted to get in there first, which is exactly what we did. And we ordered materials up front, and we started booking in fortnightly deliveries from there on, where we had a nice stock of material all the time, which avoided any potential material delays. That went down very well, and worked an absolute treat. So there's a top tip there for you. If you can, I would recommend highly that you do that. And lastly, collaborative and transparent approach. This is probably one of the best, well, it is the best contracts I've been on for that. We all understand that we're all going through the same journey, and we all want the same end goal. So regular meetings with all stakeholders, that's client, contractor, subcontractor, supplier, everyone in the same room, talking things out, dealing with issues, getting to the bottom of things. Everyone knew what was going on. Everyone had an understanding of the difficulties involved in carrying out these retrofits and how we got around them. And it was a huge lesson for us all. And I can't recommend doing that enough. This is a starting point for a lot of people now coming into the retrofit market, and transparency and having that collaborative approach is essential to achieving your goals, especially when we're working at scale. So here you can see a completed block now using this stow render system. That's everything in, including below DPC and your roof. That is the finished article. So lessons learned, and I'll say a lot of the lessons learned were from the demonstrator project that we done a few years ago, and those lessons we then brought on to wave one, which has worked absolute wonders. So again, I'll say accurate and upfront planning of enabling works. I've mentioned that, and I've gone into some detail on that. It's essential. You have to do it, and you have to do it right if you want to deliver on time. Securing materials ahead of installation. If you can do it, it's a big win. Working with preferred contractors and consultants. Again, you know, you need to get in there quick. There's not a lot of people that are accredited. That is going to start changing over the next few years, but you know, getting in there and working with the good people is certainly the way forward. Learnings from the SHDFD, the demonstrator, as I've mentioned, huge learnings from there that we brought forward. One of them mainly being the upfront enabling. We were constantly at a stop and start. It was very painful at delivery, and we certainly want to be there again, and we won't. And lastly, just to mention again, the additional scaffold costs reduce delays, as I mentioned with the flat roofs, the monopitch, the monoflex, sorry, the lids that we put on. Although it was an additional cost that we couldn't get around, there was some positives there. It did drive the program forward and avoided any potential delays due to weather. So I'm going to leave you with this video. I hope it's been an informative presentation. So thank you all. I'll leave you with this and then I'll hand over. Thanks. We've been appointed by Clarion through the partnership to complete 250 retrofits to a various number of properties in Clarion stock. So the 250 is split between two regions. We've got South region and South London. So works undertaken is a whole house retrofit. We're capturing information based on each archetype, and with that information we then put together a package of measures. Within the package of measures, we're completing mainly EWI. We're looking at the roof line and ensuring that within the design we eliminate all cold bridges. We also incorporate within the design any components which the client may want to put into the design, such as window replacements, door replacements, roof replacements. If windows were being replaced, we'd be looking at airtight measures around that window. If they wasn't, we'd be looking at eliminating the cold bridge around the windows. In time to come, if they decide that they want to then put that airtight layer in, they can without affecting the roof or our installation altogether.
We've had quite a lot done actually. We've had a new back door, new windows in the kitchen, a new front door, and we've had insulation being put all around the house. We've new fans put in the kitchen and the bathroom, as well as some new tiles put on the roof. I think the quality of the work that's been done by all the workmen and everyone has been very good. They've been very helpful. If I've found a problem, it's been fixed straight away. We've already noticed the benefits. It's warmer inside the house. We haven't had to put our heating on yet. This extra insulation is going to help us with the cost of living going up, because I think our energy bills will probably be, well, I hope there will be a lot less, because it's a lot warmer in the house.
The best part of this job is once we've completed all the hard work, we've gone through the design phase, we're now in construction, we've completed our property, we go back to the tenants, we ask for their feedback, and the feedback has been absolutely overwhelming. The money they're saving, their homes are warmer, the air is cleaner. everyone's just over the moon with their property once we've gone in there and finished it. It's absolutely amazing.